I am sitting in a charcoal Mercedes-Benz, engine off, dashboard clock glowing 4:10 p.m. on a Saturday. Across the street, a vinyl-sided duplex stands, its lawn meticulously edged. My mother, Brenda, despises weeds, but she loathes renters even more. Inside, 30 people are celebrating her 50th birthday, drinking red fruit punch from her prized crystal bowl. They are waiting for me to walk through that front door, expecting a broken, destitute woman returning to beg for a bed in the basement. What they don't know is that I own the very ground they're standing on. In the passenger seat, a black leather portfolio rests, containing 4 documents: a yellowing, taped together acceptance letter from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, a $300,000 irrevocable trust, a bank receipt for wire fraud, and a notice of foreclosure. The mathematics of revenge are simple, but the execution requires patience. I check my watch. I have waited 6 years for this specific afternoon. My name is Mila Hamilton. In my family, tradition wasn't written down, but its shape was understood. The eldest daughter stays. She stays home, marries young, and takes care of the house. My grandmother stayed. My mother stayed. I was the one who broke the chain. Welcome back to Revenge Order. This channel is for the family scapegoats who were expected to set themselves on fire to keep the golden child warm. How old were you when you realized your family didn't want you to succeed? Drop your age in the comments and hit subscribe, because what happens at this birthday party was notarized 3 weeks in advance. To understand the foreclosure, you have to understand the night the letter was torn. 6 years ago, the rule in our house sat heavy on my shoulders. I was 18. My sister Harper was 15. My Aunt Diane had tried to leave for community college a decade earlier. Brenda drained the oil from Diane's Honda Civic the night before her final exams. The engine seized on Interstate 70. Diane never left. I knew applying to MIT for applied mathematics was an act of treason. I did it anyway. The thick white envelope arrived on a Thursday at 3:14 p.m., offering full need-based aid. I hid it in my calculus textbook. At 5:12 p.m., I walked into the kitchen and found the textbook open. The envelope sat on the kitchen island next to a colander of wet green beans. Brenda stood on the other side. She didn't yell. She picked up the 3 pages of thick cream stock paper, gripped the top edge, and tore them precisely down the middle. The sound of heavy paper ripping echoed off the linoleum floor. She gathered the halves and tore them into quarters. The pieces fluttered down next to the green beans. "This is not who we are, Mila," she said, her voice flat. It was a calculated execution of my future. She turned her back to me and turned on the faucet to wash her hands. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I knelt on the floor and gathered the white rectangles. The tear had gone straight through the printed scholarship amount. I held the pieces against my chest and walked upstairs to the bathroom. I locked the door and sat on the cold tile, waiting for the house to go dark. I had a roll of clear tape and a bus schedule. The next few hours would decide the rest of my life. The bathroom tile was ice against my bare legs. I kept the light off to avoid casting a glow under the doorframe. Street lamp illumination filtered through the frosted glass window, providing just enough visibility to see the torn edges of the paper. I laid the 4 pieces of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology acceptance letter on the smooth porcelain lid of the toilet tank. I unspooled a strip of clear tape. The dispenser made a sharp plastic click. I froze, holding my breath, listening to the silence of the hallway. Brenda was a light sleeper. Her bedroom was 20 feet away. I aligned the top left quadrant with the top right. The heavy cream stock had a distinct grain. I pressed the tape down, smoothing it with the back of my thumbnail. The tear had severed the word, "Congratulations." I stitched it back together. The horizontal rip had cut directly through the financial aid figures, full need-based scholarship. I taped that section next, ensuring the numbers aligned perfectly. The repair was ugly. The tape reflected the faint yellow light from outside, creating a shiny scar down the center of my future. I folded the mended document into thirds and slid it into the inner pocket of my denim jacket. My room was across the hall. I moved in socks, stepping over the specific floorboards I knew would whine. I pulled a black nylon duffel bag from under my bed. I didn't pack memories. I packed utility. 3 pairs of denim jeans, 4 plain shirts, a heavy wool sweater, my Texas Instruments graphing calculator, and $240 in crumpled $10 and $20 bills earned from tutoring sophomores in trigonometry. The zipper on the duffel bag had a broken metal pull tab. I gripped the fabric base and slid it shut. The bag weighed maybe 15 pounds. It contained the sum total of my existence. At 3:45 inches the morning, I picked up the bag and stepped out of my bedroom. The hallway was a narrow tunnel of dark wood paneling. A shadow moved near the top of the stairs. I stopped. My heart hit my ribs. It was my father, Thomas. He wore a faded gray bathrobe over his pajamas. He smelled like stale coffee and damp wool. Thomas was a man defined entirely by his avoidance of friction. He worked at a local logistics warehouse checking shipping manifests. He never argued with Brenda. He never defended me. When Brenda drained Aunt Diane's car oil, Thomas had simply swept the driveway to hide the stain. His silence was the mortar that held Brenda's rules together. He didn't say my name. He didn't ask where I was going. He looked at the nylon bag in my hand, then looked down at the worn carpet. He reached into the pocket of his bathrobe. His hand trembled slightly. He pulled out a folded wad of currency and extended his arm toward me. I didn't reach out immediately. I stared at his open palm. 4 $50 bills, $200. Take it, he whispered, his voice rough, tight with cowardice. Don't tell your mother. He wasn't rescuing me. A rescue would involve driving me to the station. A rescue would involve standing between me and the kitchen island hours earlier. This money was a transaction. It was a severance package for his own guilt. He was paying me to leave quietly so he wouldn't have to deal with the fallout of an argument at dawn. I took the bills. I folded them into the pocket of my jacket next to the taped letter. I didn't thank him. I walked past his shoulder and descended the stairs. He didn't follow me down. He retreated back into the master bedroom, closing the door on his conscience. The front door latch clicked shut behind me. The November air was brutal. A freezing rain slanted down from the black sky, coating the Hagerstown sidewalks in a thin layer of slush. I pulled my jacket collar up and started walking. The Greyhound station was 2 miles away on the other side of the commercial district. I didn't call a taxi. I couldn't afford to leave a digital record of a dispatch. My boots crunched against the icy pavement. I walked past the vinyl-sided houses of my neighbors, people who went to our church, people who nodded along when Brenda talked about the importance of girls staying close to the nest. Every dark window felt like a watching eye. I kept my head down. 6 years later, Brenda's fortress would only accelerate her timeline. She would double down on the custody petition out of sheer desperation, attempting to secure Lily before the eviction became public knowledge. I could not allow her the opportunity to spin a new narrative. I needed to deliver the document in person. I needed an audience to witness the collapse of her empire, ensuring she had nowhere to hide the ruin. I needed the perfect stage to execute the eviction. Brenda practically handed it to me. I maintain a discreet postal box in a commercial shipping center, 3 jurisdictions away from my Bethesda townhome. It serves as a sterile drop point for sensitive corporate filings, ensuring my residential coordinates remain off the grid. On a Tuesday morning, I unlocked the metal grid to retrieve a stack of quarterly algorithmic reports. Nestled between the heavy manila folders sat a square envelope. The paper stock was heavy, textured linen. The sheer arrogance of the stationery stood out against the sterile financial documents. The return address printed on the back flap listed the Hagerstown duplex. The front bore my legal name and the precise postal box routing number written in a shaky, hurried script. I slid my finger under the seal and opened the flap. Inside rested an ornate invitation printed with embossed gold foil lettering. It announced a gathering to celebrate the 50th birthday of Brenda Hamilton. The event was scheduled for the upcoming Saturday at 4 inches the afternoon. The location was the vinyl-sided house. The suggested attire was Sunday best. Brenda did not possess my postal routing number. I spent 6 years building an impenetrable firewall to ensure she remained blind to my geographic footprint. The hurried, desperate handwriting on the envelope belonged to Harper. My sister had orchestrated a covert tactical strike. She managed to intercept the stack of outgoing invitations, navigating around Travis and his new pickup truck. She memorized my Dropbox address from our previous encrypted digital correspondence. Slipping this single envelope into the municipal mail stream was her firing a distress flare into a black sky. It was a silent plea for a physical extraction before the family court trap closed over her daughter. The timing presented a statistical anomaly that worked flawlessly in my favor. The county clerk had just verified the Apex resolution deed transfer. I held the foreclosure notice inside my portfolio. I required an arena to execute the eviction. Brenda was constructing that exact arena. However, arriving unannounced carried severe tactical risks. If I parked my luxury sedan at the curb and walked up the concrete steps wearing a tailored designer suit, Brenda would instantly recognize the threat. Her self-preservation instincts would trigger. She would engage the deadbolt. She would refuse entry. The confrontation would occur through a locked screen door, denying me the audience required to dismantle her facade. To gain access to the fortress, I needed to bypass the gatekeeper. I needed to offer Brenda a scenario she could not resist. I sat at my mahogany desk and reviewed the psychological profile of the matriarch. She derived her power from subjugation. She utilized the fabricated story of my mental breakdown and narcotic rehabilitation to control Harper. For half a decade, Brenda preached that the outside world destroys defiant daughters. If I returned as a conqueror, her narrative shatters. If I returned as a casualty, her narrative becomes gospel. I decided to weaponize the lie she spent 6 years building. I would give her the exact victory she craved. I left my office and drove to a discount pharmacy on the edge of the district. I navigated the fluorescent aisles, bypassing the premium greeting cards. I selected a flimsy, generic postcard featuring a faded floral print. I purchased a cheap plastic ballpoint pen. Sitting in the driver's seat of my vehicle, I drafted the response. I deliberately altered my precise mathematical penmanship. I loosened my grip, allowing the ink to drag and stutter across the cheap cardboard. I crafted the sentences to project desperation and defeat. Mom, I lost my job. I have nothing left. I need a place to stay. I will be there Saturday. I did not sign it with love. I merely scrawled my first name. I attached a standard postage stamp and dropped the card into a blue municipal collection bin on the sidewalk. The red herring was in transit. I initiated a predictive model of the resulting chain of events. When the rural mail carrier delivered that flimsy card to the Hagerstown duplex, Brenda would experience a profound rush of validation. Reading those staggered, desperate words would trigger a specific chemical high. Her stray daughter, the one who dared to defy the generational mandate, was crawling back to the nest, defeated by the harsh reality of independence. Brenda would not hide this development. A private reconciliation offers zero social currency. A narcissist requires an audience to validate their benevolence. She would immediately utilize the RSVP to amplify her status. She would pick up her phone and expand the guest list. She would contact the choir director, the neighborhood association, and the extended cousins. She would frame the expansion as a celebration of family unity and divine intervention. She would spend the remainder of the week orchestrating the environment. She would polish her prized crystal punch bowl. She would order an oversized tiered cake. She would direct Travis to arrange folding chairs in symmetrical rows across the living room carpet, maximizing the viewing angles for the attendees. She would instruct Harper to scrub the baseboards, oblivious to the irony that Harper was the one who had sent me the invitation. When my mother confiscated my niece's wooden puzzle blocks and replaced them with hollow plastic dolls, she was not parenting, she was programming. She identified a natural aptitude for spatial reasoning and recognized it as a threat to the established order. She attempted to clip the wings of a 6-year-old to ensure the child would never develop the aerodynamics required to fly over the state line. Effective long-term guidance demands the exact opposite approach. It requires observing a child's unique inclinations and providing the raw materials for them to construct their own future, even if that future leads them far away from the dining room table. You provide the robotics kit. You fund the science camp. You applaud the acceptance letter instead of tearing it in half. The fundamental metric of successful parenting is not how tightly your children cling to you, but how confidently they walk away. This methodology relies heavily on an atmosphere of unyielding fairness and structural honesty. Children are exceptional auditors. They observe the discrepancies between what adults preach and what they practice. When Brenda drained the custodial savings bonds to purchase a pickup truck for her son-in-law, she committed a financial crime. But the deeper violation was moral. She utilized deceit to manufacture a crisis, intending to present herself as a savior in a family court. She traded her granddaughter's tuition for leverage. Honesty in raising a child extends beyond telling the truth about where the money went. It involves maintaining a transparent environment where a child feels secure enough to develop their own identity without fear of retaliation. It means a mother does not fabricate a narrative about a narcotic rehabilitation facility to explain away a successful daughter. It means a father does not hand over a wad of crumpled bills in a dark hallway, choosing silent complicity over active defense. Thomas stood in the shadows of that duplex for decades, sweeping the driveway to hide the stains of his wife's sabotage. His silence teaches a distinct, corrosive lesson about traditional family structures. A household governed by an unchecked authoritarian requires enablers to maintain the illusion of peace. Raising children in that environment normalizes cowardice. It teaches the younger generation that standing up for fairness carries too high a penalty, conditioning them to accept betrayal as a standard component of love. Harper absorbed that lesson, marrying a man who prioritized an internal combustion engine over his own daughter's freedom. Breaking that specific cycle requires an external shock. It requires someone willing to endure the friction of a public audit. When I placed the irrevocable trust documents on the oak coffee table, I did not merely provide capital. I introduced a new paradigm of accountability. The corporate fiduciary managing Lily's funds operates without emotion, immune to guilt trips and manipulation. It represents a sterile, rigid boundary. Sometimes introducing ironclad boundaries is the highest form of love you can offer a fractured family. It forces the predators into the light and provides the hostages a secure corridor to escape. We navigate these complex, often painful audits because the alternative is unacceptable. Allowing toxic traditions to masquerade as family values guarantees the destruction of another generation. We must scrutinize the ledgers of our own households, ensuring the emotional currency we trade is backed by genuine support, not coercive control. If examining the hidden costs of family loyalty resonates with the architecture of your own life, you're not navigating this terrain alone. We dissect these complex dynamics, the quiet rebellions, and the calculated strategies of survival every week. Take a moment to follow the Revenge Order channel. We build a community for those who learned how to audit their own histories, ensuring the next generation inherits a foundation built on truth rather than a fragile house of cards. The yellowed tape on my Massachusetts Institute of Technology letter will eventually degrade. The paper will turn brittle behind the plastic glass. The physical artifacts of our past always decay. What remains is the trajectory we set for the people walking behind us. Look at the chair you occupy at your own family gatherings. Consider the unwritten rules dictating who speaks, who stays quiet, and who is permitted to succeed. We all hold a set of keys inherited from the people who raised us. The defining choice of your life is deciding which doors you will use them to unlock and which locks you will permanently change.